Ready? Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order. We have a happy bunch tonight, it sounds like. So if we can, everybody take their seat, we'll get started. We'll begin with the roll call. Alderman Barnhill.
Here.
Alderman Blanton.
Here.
Alderman Caesar.
Yes.
Alderman Peterson.
Here.
Alderman Berger.
Present.
Alderman Brown.
Present.
Vice Mayor Potts.
Present.
Alderman Baggett.
Present.
And the mayor is here. Everybody's present. So we'll now go to citizen comments. Mindy Tate wants to come make some comments. So welcome.
Thank you. So I'm Mindy Tate, CEO of Franklin Tomorrow. First of all, as a resident of Franklin who lives on Carton Lane, thank you for opening Lewisburg Pike as soon as you possibly could. I know the day's coming when you're going to close it again for a sidewalk, but we're pretty happy about having a sidewalk into town as well. So we appreciate that. But I'm here tonight as the CEO of Franklin Tomorrow. We're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year, and in 2025, we've been, along with the city, selected by the National Civic League to participate in what is known as a Healthy Democracy project, building a healthy democracy project. And we've had several procedures were processed through this year. We did a community survey early in the year. We held a community meeting in April at night with about 60 or 65 citizens present talking about things that are important to them. And from that meeting and the survey have come 5 themes that we're focused on, and those are youth leadership and engagement, civic awareness and engagement, cultural assets, and also then economic development, as well as historic preservation and our cultural assets as well. We've met with our consultants. We've met as a board, our 25-member board, and we're going to be identified the top 3 of those that we'll be working on, and those include youth leadership engagement, number 1. Secondly would be civic awareness and engagement, which is part of our daily work. And then third, to look at our cultural assets, our cultural and natural assets as it relates to public art, as it relates to our park development and preserving those. But next Tuesday morning, Franklin Tomorrow will host our quarterly breakfast with the mayors, and we've dedicated that one, which will be in Liberty Hall at the Factory at 7 a.m. on Tuesday, October 21st, to sort of having some table discussions with citizens about these top 2 themes, youth engagement and leadership, and then civic awareness and engagement. We're very excited to say that we are over 300, we're right at 375 registrations for that event, which is a significant number. But we're most excited to say that almost 50 of those are youth from our community. Working with our school systems and working with other organizations to be able to sit down and talk directly with the youth in our community about how they want to be engaged and the potential that exists for them in our community is very exciting. Thank you to Mayor Moore, who's worked right alongside of us this year in trying to look at the potential of something like a youth advisory commission, whether that was through Franklin Tomorrow or through the city, but we're working and looking at those options. We're very excited. The Entrepreneur and Innovation Center is bringing about 20 students, but also the Franklin Special District, Dr. Snowden has approved that middle school students can participate alongside their parents. So we're going to hear from a range of youth, and that is very exciting. When people leave next Tuesday, they will get a post-event survey that will ask them some simple questions, but also very similar to what we did in 2018, 2019 with On the Table, to report out what they heard and what came of their discussion at their table so that they can have a free and open discussion at the table. Again, it's a free event thanks to our great partners and sponsors and the support we receive annually from the city. But it starts at 7 a.m. at Liberty Hall at the Factory, not our normal place. But we're excited to be there and to continue to move this project forward. So I'm open to any questions. You all are invited. We'd ask you to RSVP to make sure we have enough biscuits and a great place for you to sit. So just any questions, I'd be happy to take those. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, wait.
Alderman Caesar.
More of a comment and wanting to just acknowledge and thank Mindy for leading this charge. I was involved in one of the community discussions and really excited about ways to look at that next generation and how we can best engage them. I believe I've been asked to be one of the table folks for next week's meeting, hosts, to try to stimulate this discussion. I'm discussing with my 2 children about the opportunity to come with me. I think you said at one point there were 100 spots. I hope we run out, and encourage those who are at home watching to consider bringing their children with them to this important event so that we can help pave the way for the future of our community.
We hope we run out too, and we will be able to. What often happens at Breakfast with the Mayors is people RSVP, and maybe 10 to 15% of them can't end up not being able to attend or choose not to attend, and you have 10 to 15% who didn't RSVP, so it equals out. This is a little different than Rolling Hills, where there's ample, really significant space, and the chairs are there and that sort of thing. So a table discussion, we really are asking people to RSVP so we can keep count of that and have that set up for Tuesday morning. And we won't really be recording this one because for replay, because it would be sitting at tables, and we probably are not going to have that. But we will report out, and that post-event survey will be, the results of that will be available as well.
Photo opportunities are available for ward aldermen.
Yeah, you said that, not me, but yes, they would definitely
I'm
be.
just saying, I mean,
So
at large also.
yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for the support of Franklin Amara over the past 25 years and the difference we are able to make in the community by engaging citizens. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay, item 1 on the agenda is Resolution 2025-78, a resolution to initiate a study of the request of the property owner for a plan of services for potential and future annexation of 4.08 acres located east of Oxford Glen Drive and north of Clovercroft Road. Established a public hearing on November 11th, 2025. Chelsea,
Good evening.
how did the pastries go? You got any left over?
Plenty. So if you want to come by the planning department tomorrow, you will have breakfast and lunch and maybe dinner. No, we had about 15 or 20 people come out, and we're mostly residents, which was really great. I was happy to see so many people interested in just chit-chatting with us, and it was successful. I'm grateful for it. So this property is adjacent to planned districts with single-family residential uses. It's contiguous to the city limits, and it's within the city's urban growth boundary. This property is within the mixed residential design concept as defined by Envision Franklin Land Use Plan. Envision Franklin's mixed-use residential design concept states that the defined character across this design concept may vary by neighborhood, but that new development should transition from existing development patterns in adjacent neighborhoods. The applicant intends to develop a few single-family homes, but no formal plan has been submitted for staff to review. The plan of services included as an attachment does outline how the city would serve the property and any additional infrastructure that would be required for any new development. This property is within the Watson Creek Drainage Basin and is identified as a short-term capability area in the city's annexation analysis. The property lies within the Mill Crofton Utility District and would need to follow their guidance on extending water infrastructure. The Navarra subdivision lies west of the property, which is within the city limits. If Navarra moves forward and extends sanitary sewer, the applicant's sanitary sewer extension requirements may be decreased, but without Navarra, the applicant would be required to extend the sewer approximately 3,000 feet to serve the subject property. This property includes Clovercroft Road, which is a future roadway listed on the major thoroughfare plan, and the property currently cannot be developed with additional density without the needed infrastructure from the adjacent development, Navarra. If BOMA would like this property to be further studied with the intent of potentially annexing, staff recommends that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen approve Resolution 2025-78, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Chelsea. Alderman Berger.
Chelsea.
Yeah.
Okay, so this would be in my ward if it got annexed in. It's right next to Navarro, which is on the corner of Clovercroft and Oxford Glen. Navarro is getting developed. I think I saw some equipment out there the other day. They're getting ready to start the site work. So they would be able to get the sewer. I definitely want us to move ahead and get a plan of services, but I'll be very careful how this is zoned. I want this zoned only for single-family residents. I did read, it says their property are planned, I believe I read in here that they planned for one single-family home or maybe two. Did
A
they say?
few. It's a family that would like to develop a couple of homes for them to live in
Yeah,
as a family.
as a family.
Yes.
And so I don't take issue with that because we're talking 1, 2, 3 maximum probably. I don't think the plan of services would show 4 on that. Maybe they won't even show 3, I don't know. But I want to make sure that we're held to single-family dwellings on this, not mixed use, not anything else but single-family. And that the plan of services, I'll be anxious to see if that comes back, if we vote this through, to come back to see what's allowed on that side, how many units they could actually get. And I want to make sure the density is kept way, way down. So I think 1, 2, or 3 max would be probably sufficient for that area and not overwhelm it. So those are just my comments. Thanks.
Sure.
Anybody else? Alderman Peterson?
To say the same kind of thing, that it probably should be mostly single family. And it's just 4 acres.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know,
Thank you, Chelsea.
No problem.
Next is City of Franklin Contract 2025-0346 with Habitat for Humanity Williamson Murray for reimbursement of costs from Community Development Block Grant Funds for the construction of 2 new affordable deed-restricted single-family homes at 409 Natchez Street and 1209 Mulberry Street, amount not to exceed $250,000.
Good evening. This is a fairly routine contract for expenditure of our community development block grant funds, but it is actually exciting because this is our first opportunity to partner with Habitat for Humanity since 2018, I believe. And with these funds, their intent is they have acquired 2 pieces of property in the city of Franklin for the first time in a long time through dedicated work from your staff, particularly Kathleen and the Habitat for staff. They were able to identify and acquire a couple pieces of property, and they will build 2 deed-restricted homes on this property. These items are on both of your agendas this evening because they have already incurred costs associated with this project. So we wanted to go ahead and be able to start reimbursing them right away.
It is a 30-year deed restriction, so that will keep it in that affordable range. And again, excited to have a Habitat project back in Franklin for the first time in a long time.
And Eric, that's renewal, if they leave, it renews, it starts.
Yes.
Again.
Another 30 years, right, with each?
Correct.
Yep.
Alderman Brown, then Vice Mayor.
Kathleen, you're doing great. You're doing great. Keep it
Well,
up.
I drove around on my way here and found another one.
I'm sure you did. Keep it up.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to thank Kathleen and Tom and the entire Housing Commission. I serve as appointed by the mayor to serve on this commission. We have really worked hard on this, especially in the last go-around. Kim can't be here tonight, but she just wanted to thank all of us for our support because, as we said, this first time since 2018 that we're going to have 2 homes, not just 1, but 2 coming forward. So this is an exciting opportunity for an affordable housing for our city. So great job, Kathleen.
Oh, I'm sure they
Yeah,
did.
and Tom.
Yeah.
Thank you. Item 3, procurement of award to Polydyne of Riceboro, Georgia, in a total amount of $172,273.59 for sludge polymer.
I know you all love talking about biosolids. So
That's why I abbreviated it.
We
my
put it on
favorite
both
flavor.
agendas. We're so excited about it.
Alderman Brown.
Just say, though, that Taylor gave a fantastic tour in your stead for the German delegation.
Yes.
I meant to send an email, and I will still send one, but he did a fantastic job, and you need to have him doing that more often. Just a really fantastic job. I was really impressed.
That is great to hear. Thank
Yeah.
you. I will pass that on.
Yeah.
I'll throw him some nectar points.
So you were able to visualize the Polydyne sludge polymer in person.
I was. I got my extra credit course in.
Did we get you some utility
I
credit?
hope
hour
so.
credits?
I
We
hope
should.
so. I think that's like my.
No, when Michael presents on the annexation, we did do credit for that one,
Good.
so pay attention.
All right, good.
So, do you any questions? This is this bid came in lower than we anticipated that we had budgeted for. With our new thermal hydrolysis process, we're using less polymer than we were before. So, continuing to work to optimize the system, but this is a good move for us. So,
Item 4 is Amendment 1, City of Franklin Contract 2025-0125 with Toll Southeast LP Company, Inc. for Parkland Impact Fee and a construction agreement for Magnolia Green.
Good evening. I'm Heather Eusebio, the Research and Planning Specialist with the Parks Department. This is an amendment to a Parkland Impact Fee and construction agreement with Magnolia Green. They currently have 59 new dwelling units, and we are decreasing to 57 new dwelling with 2 existing. So they just decreased their required Parkland Impact Fee to just under $254,000 to just over $245,000.
Any questions?
This is.
Oh, yeah,
It's just right where,
Murfreesboro Road.
it's on Murfreesboro Road. Yeah, right where Ralston Lane will come in and go across.
It's the green barn.
It is the green
That's
farm.
right.
Thank you.
No questions? Thank you. Heather.
Thank you.
Item 5 is Resolution 2025-73 to amend certain provisions of Resolution 2018-65 establishing defined contribution retirement plans effective January 1st, 2019 for employees hired on or after January 1st, 2017.
As Christine's pulling this up, this is just something we've looked at in terms of an enhanced benefit for our employees. We want to encourage them to participate in the 401 program and the match that we provide. So we're looking at a way to enhance that and extend the opportunity to get in it sooner for our employees. So we've talked this through with the pension committee, and Christine will take you through it now. But I really think it's a great opportunity to do a little more for our folks and encourage them to save themselves towards retirement. So take it away, Christine.
Thank you. At the August 25th meeting of the pension committee, employee pension committee, the staff and the pension committee had a conversation about this plan, that this is a voluntary deferred contribution matching program that is for employees that have been hired, full-time employees hired since January 1st of 2017, who are also members of the state pension program. We do, of course, have a closed single employer plan that is retirement plan for employees hired before then. However, this group is now, the ones who've been hired since 17 are now, just as a little piece of fact, we have more active employees that are on the state pension plan than are on our closed plan. We've crossed over as of this summer to more of our employees are on the state pension plan in almost 9 years. In addition to the state pension plan, we had this additional voluntary program that was modeled after a neighboring city who is also a member of the state pension plan, who has this additional voluntary defined contribution matching program. And so we, as of this summer, and we've been watching this for several years because 2019 was when our employees first reached a 2 year of hire, which the plan does require 2 years of service before being eligible for the matching program. And we had about 35% of our employees participating that are eligible in this program. And certainly 2019 is not a long time, and when it comes to retirement planning, however, we have been watching that, and we would like to encourage more participation in this program, because certainly saving for retirement as early as possible in your career can help an employee be ready for retirement when those days come. So we have been watching. We're at 35%, and staff did discussed two proposals with the pension committee, and we had a very thorough conversation at that meeting about this plan. The exact details is that it is a dollar for dollar match, and the employee puts funds up to 2% of their salary into a 401A plan, or into the 457 plan. The city matches into a 401A plan. The two proposals that we discussed for the pension committee, with the pension committee, and are in this resolution, be first of all to remove the 2-year waiting period. Just kind of a wide variety of reasons why we think that may help increase participation. When an employee is first going through orientation and onboarding and they're signing up for benefits, they learn about this program, but then we remind them when the 2 years come, but when you're electing your benefits and looking at what your elections will be out of your paycheck, if you're able to go ahead and participate in a retirement program such as this, you may just go ahead and do that. And certainly a lot happens in 2 years, and any maybe excitement that you had about that program, you forgot about over a 2-year time period. But also, certainly that's the most interaction employees have with that hiring and onboarding process. Perhaps folks would go ahead and sign up at that time. But we'd like to go ahead and waive that 2-year waiting period. And then also we have a proposal to increase the maximum contribution that would be matched up from 2% to 3%. There would still be, the employee may still participate at lower levels. We certainly would want people to just get into the program if they can't afford at the maximum, but to go ahead, and there may be some employees that extra opportunity to have matching dollars toward retirement may incentivize them to participate as well. And certainly an employee who gets into a situation where they need to back off, they can certainly back off, and there's no requirement that they stay at that level that if something happens in their life.
Yeah, they can modify their contribution anytime.
In fiscal year 2025, the city expense for the match for this program was just a little over $132,000. Certainly, while I wouldn't say 50% is the goal we want to reach, but it's going to take a little time to get to a higher participation. But if we could get to 50% participation with the higher match opportunity, that could be an additional $237,000. But that would not be in this fiscal year. That's something that we would be closely monitoring and working with our budgets staff, that in a future year we would recommend an appropriation. But that just gives you some context of what the city does spend for that program currently. As I said, this was discussed on August 25th, and we had a unanimous recommendation from the Employee Pension Committee. And we do have 2 members of the Employee Pension Committee are on the Board of Mayor and Alderman. Alderman Barnhill is our chairperson, and Mayor Moore is also on the Pension Committee, and they were there for that conversation. If this resolution is adopted, the plan changes would be implemented in January of 2026.
The other reason we do this is there's a little bit of a disparity from the closed plan to the TCRS plan in terms of how that multiplier works, et cetera. And having this additional match for folks in the 401 does help close that gap a little bit. And so that's another important reason to do it. I'd love to see us get more than 35% of folks taking advantage of that opportunity. This gives people a pathway to put an additional 6% away collectively between city money and their own money towards retirement, and that's a really positive opportunity to give people. So we strongly recommend it from staff standpoint, along with the recommendation from the pension committee itself.
Any questions? Alderman Peterson.
I'm going to say I was very happy when we decided to go off of our just city plan and go into a Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System, because it is extremely good, and it works very well. I mean, I'm one of the people who's on that. On the pension now, but I do believe it was a better thing for us to do than to try to run our own pension setup ourselves. And so this sounds like an interesting continuation of ways to work with it.
Thank you, Christine. Item 6 is ordinance 2025-41, an ordinance to amend Title 6, Chapter 1, Section 109 of the Franklin Municipal Code relative to arrest by police officers.
I'll really have Shauna walk this through for you. This reflects a change in state law that we want to align our own local ordinance with. So take it away.
Yeah, so the municipal code addresses when police officers can effect an arrest. And in this past legislative session, there was a law that was passed that allows police officers to arrest for a misdemeanor trespass if there's probable cause enough to believe that it happened without them actually seeing it. Generally speaking, police officers can only arrest if they see the thing happen. But this is a new change in law. It's already law. They can already do it. I'm not really sure why our municipal code talks necessarily about this, but it does. And so because it does, we do have to amend it and allow for it through our code. So this is really just kind of a administrative change, but they can already do it. Any questions about that?
Item 7 is annexation cost analysis calculator, and I'm told that we're getting utility CME credits.
Yes, you are. So, take note. There will be a quiz at the end. So, one of the things we've worked on with the board and with our staff team over the last year or so is to look at ways to enhance the information we provide for you as you're looking at annexation, understanding its impact. And this is a specific effort to look at assessing costs associated with infrastructure, costs associated with additional operational needs. That's something we've done pretty consistently, but this is a way to try to drive maybe a little more detail into that process and to help you with more tools and understanding the impact of annexation and how that might affect us in terms of budgetarily, operationally, et cetera. So Michael, Catherine, and Eric are going to walk you through some of this and be glad to discuss and get your guidance on how you want to continue to develop this tool and how to apply it as we move forward. So take it away, Michael.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, Mayor and Alderman. My name is Michael Walters Young, your Chief Budget Performance Officer. With me tonight are members of a team we've pulled together to try to develop this tool, Catherine Harrelson of the Office of Budget and Performance, and Eric Connor, the Planning and Sustainability Department. Andrew Orr has also been helping us with this, but Andrew cannot be with us this evening. You have two attachments. You have this presentation and you have a spreadsheet, which has been printed. It's actually multiple tabs. This is the actual calculator itself. Don't worry, I'll be referring to the presentation itself as we move forward. Yes, the footnote that Michelle and Eric have made mention, you are getting utility credit for this because we talk about water and sewer. So Michelle says pay attention. That's your option, of course, but they're warning there are a lot of numbers ahead, but we're going to try to keep this at a high level as we move forward. So over the last several years, we all, our citizens, development partners, you, the elected officials, as well as us on staff, have heard and witnessed increased concern over development projects, especially those which may or may not require additional operational or capital infrastructure to properly service to established city standards. Now, we do things with intention in this community. We have very high development standards. We have a very well-established process for how we bring development into the community and have it be developed. You look at the citizen surveys consistently. How do you feel about the city's management of growth? As of this spring, the latest survey, 74% rated it as excellent or good. But that's down 10% from where it was 9 years ago. So it is a concern. We all know this. Specifically those projects which are outside of the corporate boundaries of Franklin, where annexation is required, there is an increasing need to quantify, as well as what we have established, qualify additional burdens on city services and assets. This presentation and this tool attempts to take a stab at addressing and giving you all a tool to actually quantify the cost of growth and development in the city of Franklin on a development by development basis. So this has been going on for 6 to 8 months or so, we began internal discussions after meetings and conversations here and with Planning Commission in spring. In May, this concept went to Joint Conceptual Workshop. In June, we reviewed it on the Development Services Advisory Commission, which I serve as the City Administrator's Liaison, and Catherine is Chief Staff Liaison too. And we reviewed the concept again with you all in later June. And tonight we are returning to you to discuss it again. So the tool itself we have dubbed the Annexation Cost Analysis Calculator, or ACAC. We love acronyms in government. I hearken this back to Star Wars, so think of an AT-AT, you have an AC-AC. You have to have fun with this stuff, folks. The detailed spreadsheet is designed to assist you and us determine how much growth will cost. We have tried to estimate both recurring and one-time revenues and expenditures, which are dependent upon the development proposed. One of the keys to this tool, and I'll reference this again in a few slides, is the usefulness of the tool will depend upon the information that we ask our development partners for and when. The more we know, sooner, the more effective this tool is. So as we use this, and our proposal for you this evening is to continue working on it, continue developing it, and integrate it into a more robust plan of services, we would be refining the information that is asked for, which, again, can be subject to change, but it's an attempt to try to get you the best estimate possible. What you have in front of you consists of 4 items of the 5 that are listed on the screen. There's an overall project summary. There is a return on investment or cost summary. There are detailed recurring costs. There are detailed one-time costs. And there is a series of assumption detail which is not provided yet this evening. We will come back to you at a later date and time if you wish to see this flushed out again. We are continuing to refine the methodology. We are standardizing it as much as we can, but again, every development is unique. So it may very well be that the size of that sewer line, or the size of the road improvements, or what may be a developer cost versus a city cost may be different, depending upon what is being proposed. But there are certain things that we can make solid estimates on and that we do know. Those usually come in the form of recurring revenues and expenses. We have come up with estimates for all taxes that are generated from a proposed development, whether they be property taxes, occupancy taxes, hotel motel taxes if there are new hotel rooms, and estimated sales tax, both local option and state shared, as well as fees for service, sanitation, stormwater, water management. This is where the folks like Christine and I that are the finance people in the room need to say that the estimates for taxes are naturally conservative, especially for the amount of sales taxes generated per household. But to ignore the fact that they generate it would be to not tell a full picture. What we have the best handle on are our recurring costs for maintenance. So public facilities, roads, sidewalks, water and sewer lines, sanitation vehicles, and the cost of personnel necessary. We can calculate that down to the type of medical plan, the cost of the uniform, the boots worn, the fuel in the truck, et cetera, et cetera. We provide that to you on an annual basis when we ask for new items and personnel in the budget. One-time revenues consist of impact fees paid, city and county facilities, parkland dedication, road impact, water and sewer impact, as well as the one-time building permit fees. One-time expenses consist of the costs incurred to the city. Key point. Costs incurred to the city to install infrastructure, aka public facilities, roads, sidewalks, water and sewer lines, pump stations, parks, as well as vehicles. So police cruisers, the developer would not be responsible for paying for. If we choose and believe that we need to add an officer, we would build that into operational costs, but the purchase of that cruiser is a one-time expense. The fire engine, if we need to open a new fire station, the sanitation, rear end loader, etc., or side loader. As I said, the goal of what this shows is a quantifiable estimate of the cost of service to provide city standards in annexed property. The limitations. The exact details for city services are usually not available the earlier you go in the development process. Changes to what is requested in the development process may require and may change the effectiveness of the tool or require us to revisit the tool and the estimate. And the other component of this is that this is a full build-out estimate because it's the cost of what it's going to provide city services when the development is fully built out. You all know what that means. We would not necessarily incur, if we need to add, as the example will show, 4 police officers, we may not need to add all 4 in year 1. So we have come up with an example for you this evening, Franklin Hills Estates PUD. This example is a non-contiguous to the city of Franklin. It's 2 miles outside. It's approximately 200 acres. It is proposed to have a combination of 120 single-family units, 100 townhome and duplex units, 72 multifamily units, and 20,000 square feet of neighborhood commercial. It is within the urban growth boundary of the city of Franklin. On the screen, you can see the first part of the overall summary. We would have the name, the type of development, the acreage, a brief description, and then identify everything we know. So a lot of this information already comes from the plan of services. This is designed to try to standardize it in a form where we can have it and it can save time in terms of producing this. So the utility district in this case would be Mo Crofton. The envisioned Franklin design concept and the proposed design concept would be Village Green. Distance from the city, the type of zoning district, how many public road lane miles would be created, how many sewer lane or line miles would be created, how many miles of reclaimed would be created, et cetera, et cetera. You can see that there's zeros for public parks and for water, but if they were part of the development, they would fit in there as well. The next slide shows residential features. So we are able to estimate the number of single-family homes, the average market value of those homes, and then what their assessed value would be. Now, why is that important? That helps us create the property tax estimates for each of those particular pieces of property. Same is true for townhomes and duplex, same is true for multifamily, as well as then estimated rental per multifamily unit, the total number of multifamily structures, and the expected population generated by development. We have estimates for how many average people live in a single-family home, townhome, multifamily residence, etc. That is important because it calculates state-shared sales tax amounts. Pause for water.
Go ahead, Alderman Byrd.
So nowhere in here are you estimating any kind of square footage, are you? Of homes?
Not in the summary.
Okay.
We can add that, but it would be dependent upon, of course, the developer saying and defining what that amount would be.
Probably later on in the process?
Correct.
Okay.
And that would be key, of course, to be able to properly quantify stormwater fees. Because, of course, as you know, you have a base fee amount that is 120% if it's a large lot, 75% if it's a small lot residential, and then a base amount if it's commercial. So we need to know the impervious service as well as the size of the home.
And you're also assuming that every single-family home is going to be worth $1 million?
In this example, yes.
In this particular.
In this particular example. It is the average sale price of a home in Franklin, Tennessee over the last 12 to 18 months has been at or over $1 million.
But you could change that.
Of course, right. Everything here is malleable and can be modified. Our goal was to try to create at least a standard template to work forward from. The next slide shows commercial features. 20,000 square feet of neighborhood commercial, estimated market value of $3 million and an assessed value of $1.2 million. Keep in mind, of course, that industrial and commercial properties are assessed at a higher rate than residential. If there was a hotel added, we'd show that value here, and then office square footage. We have a place for intergovernmental questions. So is there anything that gets added to the major thoroughfare plan? Is an interlocal necessary between the city and the county? Because Shauna needs more on her to-do list. We try to identify that in one place up front so we could see all of that information. The next two slides show you financial summaries. So the detail pages show you some of the calculations. We estimate that this would generate roughly $500,000 or $528 million in general fund revenues, $115,000 in sanitation, $10,000 in stormwater, and $269,000 in water management, or in this case, sewer, because there is no city water. Offsetting that are expenses of $496,000 in the general fund, $82,000 in sanitation, $29,000 in stormwater, and $25,000 in water management. This proposed mythical 200-acre development with 260 or 70 units and 20,000 square feet would show a net positive to the city to operate over on an ongoing basis. The one-time revenues total $6.4 million. The highest of those are the road impact fees, parkland dedication, and sewer impact fees, as well as their city facilities. The $74,000 in general fund is the estimated building permit fees as a result of said development. And offsetting that are one-time expenses of $244,000 to the general fund and $411,000 to the sanitation fund. Now, the next slide, I know the numbers get smaller. Bear with me, we're almost done with the numbers. Breaking it up per fund, you can see that 3 of the 4 operational funds are in the green in this proposed example. 1 is not. Now, that one that is not should not surprise anyone. It's the stormwater fund, which we've told you is we did subsidize this year, and we will be coming back to you with a cost of service study looking at revenues versus expenditures as part of the budget process in fiscal 27. You'll note that the general fund and sanitation funds in and of themselves have one-time expense deficits because the police cruisers would be paid out of the general fund and the side loader would be paid out of the sanitation fund, except that those are also eligible costs in city facilities. So if you look at the fine print, there is the asterisk there that the city facilities taxes that they pay could offset the expense purchases to handle those pieces of equipment. The other footnote, of course, from this note is the road impact fees and the parking dedication fees are subject to offset agreements. So if there are improvements which are paid for by the developer, they'd be able to get a large possibility of those back. So these numbers would change. Again, it's really a question of what each development has, but we've tried to standardize it as much as we can. What are we asking for this evening? Your initial feedback, response. If you like it, and we hope you do, we'd like to keep working on it. Like I said, we've generated one-time and recurring estimates that literally go account by account, and we can identify the cost per person, we can identify the cost per truck, we can identify an estimated cost per road and lane mile, et cetera, et cetera. We have estimates on taxes, which are conservative, but reasonable, because they do take educated guesses as to how much our total taxes earned are or collected are in property and sales, and make estimates per population in terms of state shared and per house splitting up, as well as how much a neighborhood commercial could generate in sales tax versus not. One thing that we are not trying to do with this is to price out a potential development. What we're trying to do is respond to a desired request, which is to make sure that you have all of the information necessary when you evaluate proposed development as to how much it really would cost the city of Franklin to extend city services, or And it doesn't have to be just for annexation potential in the future. It could also be infill development. If there are substantial things that need to be done with redevelopment within the city as time goes on, a tool like this could be used to augment and support and enhance our already high development standards and the proper planning. The goal is to add more quantitative to our qualitative analysis. Mr. Stuckey, anything you'd like to say to close?
No, I think Michael and the team have laid it out well. We'd love your feedback. We've just been working over the last year with you to look at ways to just enhance and provide you with more tools, more information to assess and think through the impact of these big decisions that come your way. So we'd love to hear more from you.
Got Alderman Brown, followed by Alderman Berger, followed by the Vice Mayor, and then Alderman Peters,
I think it's great.
and Alderman Baggett.
I think continuing to go down this path is great, and thank you for doing this. And I want to go back to the very first bullet on the first slide of why you were heading down this path, and it's addressing community concern. And obviously, we're focused on the city. It's what's in our domain and what we control and what we're responsible for. I had a conversation this week. Commissioner Petty believes that he wants to pass legislation where the county would have domain and authority over municipality development approvals. The genesis of that is there's impact on schools. My question would be, if we're trying to understand full impact, is there worthwhile, even though it's not our domain, is there a worthwhile exercise in at least flagging, putting a ratio in here, working with our county commissioners at least to say, do a gut check with the county. Hey, if this came in, this would be the general impact on, this is the ratio, the impact on a school system. I think it would actually probably settle more than it would probably raise in concerns given where the schools are and where school headcounts are and all of that. But I think if we're trying to be true to that first thing, instead of going to the extreme of usurping province and authority, perhaps maybe we can find common ground on sort of where we can educate and inform, and maybe this is a step in that direction. So I toss that out there as a suggestion of a complete full picture of annexation within our UGB, as maybe that's something we might want to consider.
Alderman Berger.
On that topic, if I could just respond a little bit, I certainly would be glad to explore that. There is a school impact fee, structure that's set up at the county. I would suggest we look at how we integrate what comes through that process into something like this, so you get a more holistic view. There might be some other elements that are missing in that, but there's pieces already to that puzzle that we could certainly integrate here. That's a great idea, and we're glad to work with the county and schools on how that might fold into this analysis.
Yep.
Alderman Berger.
Are we still meeting quarterly with the schools? We've done that in the past.
Planning does a regular meeting. I don't know that it's quarterly anymore, but we do a check-in.
We do a check-in annually.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, we used to do it a lot more often, and I would suggest that we pick that back up.
Well,
It
the
somewhat-
other thing that has happened in the last couple of years, we've done a lot of work together on assessing the UGB and the realignment of those lines. And so that has taken a lot of time and capacity for all of us to
Right.
do that work, but it very much applies to those same areas as well.
Yeah, and I think going forward, we might want to set those meetings a little bit more robust in our schedule, rather than once a year review. I think quarterly or twice a year, well, probably twice a year, because then we have developments coming through. And I know we used to meet with them and calculate out where these developments were going to go and what school capacity would be. So I think we need to get back into that a little bit better. But you're right, when we were concentrating on UGB, there wasn't much time. It's exactly what I wanted to ask too, Matt, is that in here we don't address the schools at all, even though it's not in our jurisdiction. we can't do this thing in a vacuum. And I think this element of putting an element of the education element into this is going to be very critical for us. I think it's us reaching out to the county and, as Matt said, being more responsible to work with them. The other thing was, do we, when you do these developments and everything, we look at all of the stuff, this is great, by the way, thank you. This is very, very helpful. When we look at all that, we approve development, the developers pay their impact fees, we have costs associated with the city and all this stuff. But if we're truly looking at it, future upkeep of roads and infrastructure into the future is on us. So that really doesn't come into play here at all. And I'm wondering, how do we, as a community, we look at all these developments, we look at all the growth, whether it's commercial, office, residential. In the future, we are responsible, and I know we have the property taxes and everything, but I think there is a missing calculation in here, possibly for the future, way down the road for upkeeping, because they do a development, they put in the roads and everything. We may not touch that for 10 or 15, 20 years, or we may.
So, page 6 of the calculator itself, not the presentation, but the calculator, does have a list under Public Works of estimated maintenance on an annual basis.
Okay, it's not in here.
Our method, and it's not necessarily sufficient to upkeep, but our method was to take our annual maintenance budgets and divide them by the units and the size or the number of lane miles that we were adding. Or in the case of, plant maintenance, the number of additional SFUEs or population we're adding. So we know the costs of personnel and operations and electricity and the amount that we put in the street aid fund to go and repave neighborhood streets. That's captured here to at least give an estimate. Now, is it sufficient to maintain everything?
No.
Probably not. But it does. We do acknowledge those ongoing maintenance costs because you're right. The people that are living in those homes are paying taxes.
Sure.
And we are, that needs to be reflected as
You're
part
going
of
to
the
collect
cost.
some of that, and you're going to have some of that, but it's probably not totally sufficient. All right, that's all for now. Thanks. Thank you,
Vice
Michael.
Mayor. Thank you, sir. First, Michael, great presentation. I think you're hitting the nail on the head here. I think that there's a lot of great opportunity, and Eric, to answer your question, I absolutely do want to see this moving forward. Michael, you said that this is our first iteration, and that kind of leads me to my first question, and that is this ACAC, great acronym by the way, is this based on another municipality's annexation cost analysis calculator, or is this totally been baked by us?
All good government ideas are shared and liberated. I can't point to another city per se. We did look at a couple that had various templates
Some
and
calculators
versions.
of some kind.
Some calculators of some kind, but the physical individual components. This is a homegrown tool because what we charge and how we assess and what taxes we have are, of course, different in Tennessee and in Franklin than Texas or Florida or what have you.
Absolutely. No need to reinvent the wheel, retread the tire, get the best practices. All right. Do have a comment. I again, think this is a great step in the right direction. So to ensure that Franklin residents have the accurate information about proposed developments or annexations, I would just ask that somewhere in our planning that this is going to be made available on our City of Franklin website so that when people have questions and they want to know the details, instead of seeing misinformation and being socialized on social media, we can point them specifically to a location. And then another question, is there a way to calculate the percentage of utilization of water treatment plants that could calculate the need for expansion or maintenance as we look at this? And as I see your smile, it's somewhere buried in there, right?
In that exact question is not a part of the calculator at the moment. I'm smiling because we had a similar or related conversation at 3:00 today over sewer impact fees with our Water Management Office of Budget Management Performance staffs. Yeah, I mean, we can certainly look. It's a, again, we know in order to do some of these maintenance calculations, we have an idea of the added SFUEs for each unit.
Yes.
So that can be added there. What we are working to try to refine more is what are those actual impacts, and certainly understanding that all of our planning related to sewer capacity is based upon what is the average amount that we are able to treat per day. That doesn't mean that we are capped at that day over day, but that is what we are legally allowed to process through the plant. And when we reach a certain point, we need to start the process over again, which we're doing, to add additional capacity to the system.
Okay. So the follow-up for that question is, as Eric, you and I have spoken about, as we approach 2035, when the new plant comes on, I'm looking at the proposed developments for annexation that could be coming in between now and that time, and what percentage of utilization on our existing plant that's really going to be pushing.
Yeah, and that we do a availability determination early in the process. That will continue. That's always going to be part of what we do. I think what you're looking at now, especially when you're looking at a second plant, you're looking at how the system builds out most effectively, and especially transmission lines to that wastewater treatment component, where that makes sense from the drainage basins and building out those plans. And you know, what capacity belongs in the south versus the existing plant.
Right.
And that's going to be an important determination. So that is a percentage, but that's also how do we build out the basin plans the most efficient way, the way we anticipated it, without taking capacity away from the existing plan and maximizing the use of the new capacity that'll come in line around 2035.
Right. And that's why I asked the question.
Yeah.
It's a dual path.
I don't know how that lands in this calculator, but it is absolutely something we need to assess as we look at timing and staging and what makes sense to happen when.
Okay, yep. And my last one here is future phases down the road. This is such a great idea, and this is what I think the public is asking for when they're looking for development in general, is that if there is a simplified non-annexation cost analysis calculator that could be done for proposed developments as they're coming in and making those available for the public to see, so we're operating in transparency. Again, if we've got this great ACAC calculator, a simplified version could really be helpful for our general residents.
We have to start somewhere. So that's why it's always easier to truncate once you build it than it is sometimes to start. One of the things I did not say in the presentation that does need to be said is that these numbers in this scenario are in the green for the most part. There will be some, of course, where they're in the red. If you look at recurring costs and you look at even one time. And that really gets to the other piece of this, which is the answer may end up being not no, but not now, dependent upon what gets brought in and how it gets brought in. This calculation is not designed to give you that answer via a box, okay? This is just a tool to be part of that total decision making, though, that you all get to evaluate.
Thank you.
Sir.
Alderman Peterson.
There's so many different things to talk about in here. I really appreciate what has been done so far. But as we were talking, there are some other things I want to say. The water and sewer are totally not city. They're not. Let me see how to say it. That they are totally different branches and are run separate from the city. And
They're not taxpayer funded.
They're not taxpayer.
They're
Thank you.
ratepayer funded.
That is a good
yeah.
way to say it. Not taxpayer funded. Okay. Another thing that I thought about whenever we were going through all of this is, of course, I'm a real numbers person and everything, but I haven't necessarily seen over the even the last few years, seen how many different things have been built, and how many maybe square feet or just numbers and everything. But I mean, how are we doing now compared to what we were doing 3 years ago or 5 years ago or even a year ago, and to know how many things have actually do we have being actually built now compared to what we were doing before.
Alderman, if I may answer a question with a question, if the mayor allows me to, what is there an element of the quarterly development report that is provided that is not?
I don't remember. Hey, and as I say, I'm a numbers person. I don't really remember seeing them, and also certainly don't remember seeing them in the sense of compared to a year ago and compared to 2 years ago or something like that. And just to see how we are doing compared to what we have been doing. Maybe we're doing 3 times as much. Maybe we're doing a third as much.
We try to show some trend data with that report. Next time we bring it to you, we'll highlight that for
Please
you and
do.
show you, make sure we're hitting it right. We do it by dollar amount sometimes by number of permits. Maybe there's some other ways to slice
Maybe
that.
both of those.
Yeah, so
yes.
let us highlight that next time we bring the report to you, the next quarterly report, and see if there's other ways we can make
and
that
so
hit what you're
where
asking
can I
for.
find the quarterly reports that have been coming for the last, say, year or two? I don't, I don't have them printed out or anything.
Okay.
So I don't.
We
know
can
where
also cycle a couple of those back. Catherine puts those together and presents those to you. So we could cycle a couple of those back in the meantime, and maybe you can give us some feedback there too.
Because there's so many aspects to this, but also seeing how and what type of things are being built or and things like that really are important to see what's going on, really. And I'm sure I have some other things too, but those are the things I'm thinking about.
Well, Catherine's certainly done a good job on a lot of those quarterly reports, and look forward to looking back on those and understanding better the trends and also what's being built. So,
Because,
yeah.
just because you see it with ever how many other things we're looking at every week or every 2 or 3 weeks and everything, it really sometimes gets lost in the shuffle of everything because it's not
Lots
talking
to
about.
remember.
Yeah, that's right.
Alderman Baggett, then I'll get Alderman Barnhill.
Thank you. This is great. Couple things I think are key is the recurring revenues. I mean, you've said it, but that local option sales tax estimate is going to be pretty critical in the whole thing. And so, because that's the thing that, so much of our revenue is driven by that. Property tax is pretty easy to back into, I would think.
And that
based on what you've done.
That detail is, I believe, on page 5 of the
that's what I'm
calculator
on here.
itself. And the total, you'll note that in the scenario we put forward, and I think this will bear fruit and bear truth. In this particular case, more sales tax is generated than property tax, which again
Well,
should not come as a surprise
no,
because
it's not.
of how low the property tax is here and how we fund governmental operations.
But also, you're assuming $595 a year in local option sales tax per residence, which the Baggett family is spending. I mean, and that's not that much money. I mean, that's not that much.
Keep it.
But it's the portion.
Keep
it's our
in
portion
mind,
of it.
it's
our
the
half. It's not the 9.
It's our 1.375%.
So I'm kind of curious to back into that, back into what that, so we can kind of see what that assumption is, and maybe that is what we're paying. I don't know. Knowing that going back the other way, I think would be helpful, just because that's such a big driver in the annual recurring The other thing I had was expenses. And I think public safety, you had 4 police officers for this 292 unit development assumed in here, which again, I know all of this is changeable. This is not real, but I would think that it is a very big, tall drink of cost there to have 4 new police officers added for a 292. So I think I'm curious, those kinds of assumptions, like I think I would drill into that as well, because as we know, that's a major part of our annual budget is public safety. And so that is a big share that we need to, and maybe it comes out to be $459,000 in this particular example, but it's just not just 4 police officers. It was just a placeholder. I would dig into the police fire and
so that we could also, again, this was a hypothetical to show the calculator. If a fire station is required as part of a development, your annual operating cost goes up probably $1.2 to $1.5 million because you have to staff an engine company 3 shifts. That's 9 new bodies and healthcare and uniforms. And so we chose the police example because it was a little more reasonable. The building can be offset with facilities taxes. So we can buy the engine the first time with facilities taxes. But that annual operating cost...
There's got to be a marginal. I mean, I think there's a way for you all to figure out like the marginal cost of public safety. Like kind of baking all that together is. I mean, there's got to be. I think that's important. And then having a separate section for the one-time public safety investments, because that would be different for each one, or each. It could be different for a variety of situations. And also, if you're building a new fire station in a particular development, that station is not just servicing just those X number of houses. Sure. In fact, to Alderman Brown's point, it's probably going to be servicing county residents as well in mutual aid, which brings up another interesting cost of development that we share that sometimes benefits. Do our police and do our firefighters respond on mutual aid to the county?
We do.
They do.
And it was automatic aid.
The automatic aid to the county.
With Brentwood and then mutual aid with the county.
Mutual aid with the county. So there's other expenses too, I mean, and there's other benefits, I think is what I'm saying, and I think that needs to be looked at. Again, part of this kind of I think that needs to be included in this kind of collaborative county-city discussion on the mutual aid, and as we do go into these annexation areas, that means our people are going to be responding probably to those mutual aid calls, and that's going to be an additional cost. And additional benefit to county residents, right? So I think that needs to be looked into. I'm circling back to Alderman Potts' point about the sewer, and I can't recall, it's been a while, but our sewer impact fees and the water and sewer rate study anticipated and baked in a certain amount of that capital required for the new plant expansion. And those are already included in here, those new rates, I would assume, that these are the new rates. So I'm kind of, maybe some of that's already kind of inherently baked in because we're having the rates.
The rates are designed to support debt service that's needed for
the new
plant
facility.
Expansions, et cetera.
Already.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's kind of already baked in that other study, and then you're using the new rates.
That's correct.
Okay, so it's kind of already in there.
The rates as they have been approved as of July 1, 2025 for road impact, sewer, water, current building permit fees, all current fees for services and impacts are what that calculator is based on, which of course means by July 1 of 2026, the calculator will change.
We'll change again. So the last thing I'll say, and then we can move on, but I think that one thing we're hearing in the community, I think, is that the independence of this kind of analysis, and I have full confidence in the independence of this. It's frankly just math, and how you set up the equations. I think it would be important, again, for this kind of community transparency and making sure we bring everybody along, is to maybe have some other professionals, and I know you already went to the building or the development services advisory, but maybe even a more formalized setting, possibly in a public setting, have some of those discussions. So once this gets more baked, So we can talk through some of those assumptions, so the alderman can kind of weigh in on some of those assumptions. I think that's important, so that we're not creating a black box, and that we can let the public kind of come along with us on how this and the private sector, kind of come along with us and speak into this, because the last thing we want is to like kind of start moving forward with this kind of analysis, and then all of a sudden you get you get somebody come in and a resident says, well, that calculation is wrong, and then you get the applicant saying, well, that's wrong over here. Like, I think we just really need to make sure that if we can bring people along on this, that's the only way, frankly, this is going to be successful.
We've talked about, certainly the commentary that we got at Development Services was that, our development partners are interested to know, A, how this would be used, and B, what those assumptions are. And we want to be as transparent and clear. We can disagree or agree on what assumptions are.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, one assumption is going to be part of it, and that's what we'll go with. And if it says the City of Franklin, then it will be the City of Franklin's assumptions. The quality of the tool, though, as I said at the very beginning, will be completely or heavily dependent upon the information submitted by our development partners. So we want them to know what this tool is and how it functions and what the calculation is, because the goal would be that it also helps them refine before the time that they even would submit, that they can understand that this is a shared understanding of what potential costs would be, because it possibly could impact what they want to do.
I'm even going a little bit and saying that I think we need a public even workshop, not because that is one constituency, the development community,
Sure.
but the other constituency are the constituents and those that might have issues or questions about how this is formulated. I think we're seeing that more and more, and so I think it's important that we walk through this with publicly, get feedback, kind of like a public meeting, but just on this and look, not every. Most of the citizens are not going to probably care and not show up. But there are those that will. And I think it's important, like anything we do when we set policy long term, is to really get public input into it. Thank you.
Alderman Barnhill.
Mr. Stuckey said something about the county school impact fees. And I was wondering, so we don't collect any county impact fees
No, they do. They collect that. Yeah.
for Williamson County, even though we're affecting both the city school system and the county school system, probably a lot more of the county, since the boundary lines now are drawn for the Franklin Special School District. So have we discussed? Because I think what Matt said a while ago was what the county commissioner wanted to do was to have say-so over what was going on in Franklin or Brentwood or Fairview or Noblesville or whatever it was. They wanted to be able to approve or disapprove a development and understand what the impact was on the schools, and I can understand that. I mean, I'm not saying that's what we want to do. But I would like to see possibly, and if it fits into this scenario, we're looking at all the fees and all the other stuff. It could be possible that this fit into the narrative that we're talking about here. It's not something that we would keep, but it is something that we would collect and be the pass through to the county for the any home that's being built, because it's certainly impacting the county school system. And and we're sitting here, we may not say too much about it, but if there's $1 billion of debt, it's just as much on us as it is that farmer out there at Burwood, because we're going to have to, sometime or other, somebody's going to have to wind up paying for that or paying it off one way or the other. So let's look at that and see if there's a way that we can integrate that into some of our fees that we're doing now then, and might eliminate that county commissioner's comments to Alderman Matt Brown. So anyway, just look at that and see what we can do on that. Yeah.
I'm going to recognize Alderman Caesar. I've got a couple of folks who want to say something again, but I'll go to Alderman Caesar since you haven't had a chance.
Thank you, Mayor. So much has already been said. I think we all have to get comfortable, much to probably the disappointment to Michael and Christine and the school teacher here, but this will never be perfect. If we ever look back at this, it's unlikely, probably impossible, that the number that Michael shows us will match the actual number. That doesn't mean, though, that we shouldn't try to get it as close to reasonable as possible, whether it's understanding the exact hundredth of a cent on a multiplier or making sure that we have good, healthy estimates. I think we should do those things as we build this project. I think it's a great place to start. As a matter of fact, in my past, and part of celebrating National Planning Month, I've been a part of exercises where you look at the developer's return on a project, you look at the city's return on a project, and one word of caution, because we know that this will never be exactly right, is that we use this as a thumbs up or thumbs down based on revenue for the city. I want to caution us not to look at this as a way for us to make money on the projects that come into our city. We already hear plenty of folks in the community that assume that the city is out there merely to line the pockets of individuals that work within the city. I won't name any of them individually, but
Thank goodness for that.
thank you. I'm not naming any of them. If I find them, I'll let you know. But I will tell you that I think this is a good place to start, and it's quite interesting as we bring up different stakeholders in our community, like the county, that it would be also very, I think, beneficial for them to be shared this information, so that hopefully we could come together where a project would be presented to both our board and perhaps other governing bodies in the area that might help us both come in a positive direction on a project, or at least begin a discussion that maybe isn't happening today. I am curious about, in the past, this information has been collected, but it's been collected in a diffuse way. And this perhaps is maybe one of the first times where it's all been put together in a form that is digestible. Now, whether or not the multipliers and the quantify dollars that are on this example are accurate, that's probably for a later discussion. But is that, for me to understand, perhaps the best way that this is
Most of this information is available as part of a plan of service review. Certainly the one-time needs, and if there are triggers where larger developments require additional services, the plan of services make mention of that. So that's why I tried to make the distinction between qualitative analysis and the more quantitative A plus B equals C that we're trying to do here, especially when it comes to identifying the recurring costs and admittedly acknowledging those recurring revenues. We have a fee impact estimate worksheet where we calculate all the fees that you would pay one time, your building permit fees, your water impact, sewer impact. That's part of the development process and has been for anything that comes in for quite some time. But to define what our best estimates and really creating a level of service standard is another way to put what we're talking about doing here. Are there triggers? And it's causing all of us on staff to be thinking about what those triggers would be population-wise. Really, sanitation is kind of our bellwether. We know that at 900 new collection points-ish triggers the need for a new route. So that's a new body, a new loader. So that has been kind of a guide. But the defining and creating a level of service standard for police or for fire and what those triggers are is something that we're kind of getting to as part of this process. And I have a very significant feeling that the planning director would like to augment my comments.
You think?
He has an opinion she wants
The main thing I would add into what Michael is saying is that while we have a lot of these figures and estimates and numbers and projections at some point in the process, they are not normally all synthesized together before you make a decision. This tool would do that. So that would be the key piece that I would say is really important about this, is that while you might see a plan that has this information in it, it's not all laid out right in one spot for you to find it.
And so to finish up my comments, thank you for doing this because as I've sat and met with developers in the early stages of concepts, I've asked for this information from them. I've yet to receive something as well constructed as this, and I think this would be just an important piece, not the piece, but a piece for all of us to consider as development projects are coming down the pipe. And I appreciate the city taking the leadership role here. Again, never will we probably hit the nail squarely on the head, but it will help reduce some of the surprises and concerns from not only us sitting on this board, but citizens who are standing outside of this board and evaluating development. So thanks, Mayor.
Alderman Berger, then I'll get Alderman Brown.
Thanks. When the county implemented that $10,000 impact fee for the schools on the homes, individual homes, is that just county?
It's Williamson County, yeah.
For the whole county?
Yeah.
So I think Todd Kastner sponsored that, and it got voted through in, what, 2016, 17?
Something like that.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
probably in the last 10 years.
We still have that. That's still in, that's still going on. So that's permanent.
Yes, that's an ongoing.
That's ongoing,
and
permanent.
I don't know what their update
I don't know
in
either.
planning, how they update that with costs, but I know they went through a pretty thorough process to look at
Sure.
per student, per, household, how that projects out, kind of like we do
Yeah.
with roads, et cetera.
Yeah, the reason he had put that in there because the development wasn't paying enough for the schools and they needed to do that. So I just remembered that. So I know that's still ongoing. And then there's something else we consider, and we couldn't really put it into the metrics, I don't think, unless, later after things start rolling. Builders can give land for fire stations. They may donate the land. And those are things I think we request and should continue to request for larger developments, not the small developments of 5, 10, 15, 20 or something. When you have developments in the hundreds and those types of developments. And then if we do implement IDD, then we'll have other opportunities too that may be afforded to us. So those things can be put into the metrics, and we probably should have somewhere in that metrics a way to put that in there as things progress with the development. We wouldn't know that up front. Well, we would if we did an IDD. We should know some of that up front. But then, like the property for a fire station, those things. So I just wanted to run that by you.
Okay. Alderman Brown.
I was going to go the other way on IDD and just, you made the comment this would inform submissions. I actually think this could be hand in glove with IDD. I think this could quantify and take out the subjectiveness of IDD for us. I think as we're reviewing, as those petitions come in, I think it'll help us to quantify a little bit, what are we really looking at in terms of infrastructure cost? What are we looking at in terms of need? And to your point, if there's an opportunity for us to talk about, we really need a fire station there. Let's talk about getting that as part of that IDD ask.
Yeah.
We really do need missing middle in that component. Like, I think it's going to take that subjective ask out of it and say, man, we really can quantify what we really need here and what the value of this development is, and then therefore are we asking for a fair value back from the value of this development that's coming in? And this may very well work hand in glove.
More focused.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
I'd like to springboard a little bit off of one of Alderman Barnhill's comments, and perhaps we should be studying impact fees from the county on the influence of all their developments that are coming into the city, maybe. So, but that's a tongue-in-cheek comment. I'm not bringing forward, but I think Alderman Caesar touched a little bit on something that I'd made some notes about, and that would be concern about some weaponization of this tool. I'm fully in support of having this as one of many things that we use as we look at various projects to bring them forward. And certainly there's going to be some of them that may not be as bring us as much revenue because there may be a fire station, as you mentioned. I thought that was a really good point. I think it also may be a tool that we can look at whenever we're looking at increasing our impact fees. I know we've studied and talked about those impact fees, and this might be one more tool we could look at whenever we're doing those impact fees to justify what we're doing. I would springboard off of Alderman Brown's comments about the IDD. One of the notes I'd made is that I think that's one of the things that we can use to help gauge how much that value of the IDD is to us. And again, what our ask is in that. But I would caution that it will be used as a weapon against every project the developer brings in here. And so we need to be aware of that and look at many other factors other than just this one. And maybe sometimes our want for what the project is may be more important than what those dollars and numbers add up to at the very end. So, any other comments? How about item 8, which is presentation on Liberty Pike and Mallory Lane intersection improvements project updated traffic analysis proposed scoping change.
So this is an item that is on your approved 10-year capital investment plan. And we want to bring to you an update on some information as we've looked at the intersection improvements. We have additional data, additional considerations that we want to bring forward to you that will modify the nature of that intersection improvement. Our focus has always been to bring the best long-term solution in terms of managing, handling traffic volumes and looking at those demands over the long haul. And we have some additional analysis and review that has brought us to a modification of how we would approach this intersection, and we want to walk that through for you. It remains in the CIP, but it may modify that number and may have some other ramifications, and we wanted to take you through that tonight. So Paul and Jonathan are here to walk you through that and answer any questions and go from there. So take it away, Paul.
I'm going to walk you through a short presentation. I'm going to start with the project history here. This project was funded by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen as part of the 2017-2026 CIP. It was estimated to cost about $4.4 million, and that's the design, right-of-way, and construction. Initially, staff proposed to do a signalized intersection here. We were basically going to build it out to full capacity, which means double left lanes, double through lanes, and right turn lanes, just given its location and some of the projections. We went all the way through right-of-way design, had plans essentially completed, and went out for public comment. We did hear loudly from a lot of the property owners there that they want us to evaluate a roundabout. Ultimately, we needed to do a high-level functional exhibit to see if we could fit it, and we also heard from the board of shrinking that footprint. And so we looked at 3 various signal designs, basically an ultimate signalized design, a very minimal one, and one that was more optimized or right sized for the area. So ultimately, the board chose to go with the roundabout design at an estimated cost of around $22 million. And this is the exhibits that our consultant produced, really kind of the proof of concept that we could get a roundabout size adequately and limit impacts to the surrounding properties, and then also the signalized design. And really at the time, what the board based their decision on was this level of service chart that was produced by our consultant. And we hired not only one consultant, but 2 with roundabout designs. You really want to get them right. And if you get them wrong, it's really bad. And so we always bring in a third-party consultant to review it, and that's what we did here. A lot of the issues it was based off of development impact studies that we had done as part of 3 or 4 developments in that area. And since then, we did what was the Cool Springs Transportation Network Study, where we simulated the entire Cool Springs to try to identify multiple projects that were out there. And ultimately, kind of just jumping ahead, is when we got to a point to start acquiring right-of-way, we decided to part ways with the current firm that was doing the job. We hired RKK to come in and evaluate it. Adam brought up concerns with the traffic numbers. RK&K also said, before they're willing to put their name on it, they wanted to look at the traffic numbers. And so we then took the 2021 traffic numbers that we had from the Cool Springs Transportation Study, and they evaluated it. And ultimately, what they found was the roundabout, given its current size and limitations, we weren't allowing the consultant to continue to increase that roundabout size because of the major impacts that it would have on the CVS and the apartment complex. They came back and said, if we can't increase the size, they're showing multiple failures, and essentially the volume to capacity ratio is one thing that they look at. And Jonathan and I he was showing me some articles in FHWA guidance, is that when that volume to capacity gets over, it's really 0.85 or 1, it starts to fail exponentially. And that's what RK&K came back and showed with these two exhibits, is ultimately that the signalized intersection would outperform the roundabout in this case because we would not allow it to be increased in size. So essentially what staff is proposing now is to revise the scope and go back to the signal. The only real way to make a roundabout work, again, is increasing that size and looking at additional bypass lanes, which you really don't have. And so staff would recommend going back to that signal design versus proceeding with the roundabout. And, you know, one of the questions we asked around our engineer to look at, and I had Adam look at, was really look at the Korean Veterans Boulevard roundabout. Everybody should be familiar with this down in Nashville. It handles about the same capacity that we have. And my immediate reaction was, well, why can they handle it, but we can't handle it here? And how do we show that to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen? And so what William Banks and Jonathan did was they took and looked at the diameter of these roundabouts. The diameter for the KVB roundabout is 230 feet. The roundabout for Mallory and Liberty is 160 feet. And to give you another point of comparison, the McEwen roundabout's about 180 feet. And so this roundabout is substantially bigger, and you can see where they've overlaid it at this location. And what this doesn't show, this exhibit, it just shows the lanes and the diameter. It doesn't show the sidewalks that would need to be built and any bypass lanes that would need to be built with this project as well. So in summary, it's unfortunate that we've gotten to this point. I am very thankful that we did have RK&K go back and do an analysis. The last thing we want to do is spend $22 million and have a failed roundabout. We did have an opportunity to speak with Alderman Berger about this and brief her, and I know she's in agreement that if we're going to do a roundabout, it's got to be done right. And just given the property limitations, we're at this point recommending going back to a signalized intersection. And we should be able to pick up the old design and carry that forward. We'll have to revisit some things on it, but it's not a total loss from the initial design that we did. Jonathan's here to help support me and answer any questions. I'm sure you have lots.
There are just significant constraints in terms of the size we need, and we end up getting into the parking lot of the CVS. We get into the apartment complex nearby as well. That 22 million becomes significantly larger in terms of the cost of the project, and we just could not justify that. So you either got to expand it dramatically or understand that the smaller roundabout will likely fail in the 5 to 10 year window, because roundabouts function because there's a natural gap in traffic between the vehicles.
Yep.
When you get overloaded and it's too small, that gap no longer exists and it fails significantly. So we can now project that out, and we cannot go forward with something we can see failing that badly in a fairly short period of time without an option to address it long term. And the enhanced signalized intersection is really our best, given the space, both the geometry and the geography constraints as you look at this. So we're glad to answer questions, discuss it further. Again, it remains in the plan. It just is how we move forward and execute the improvements.
Got Alderman Berger, then Alderman Brown. And then Alderman
All right.
Blanton. I'm sorry, I didn't see Alderman Blanton.
We had our meeting, and I walked away from that meeting, and I said, I don't want to make sure that we do not build a roundabout that is going to be a miserable failure, because we don't want to do that. We want to be successful in our roundabouts. So after that meeting, I got like, oh man, I'm not totally comfortable with this yet, because I just think sometimes, well, first of all, the first consultant didn't turn out so well. Nobody was happy about that. You guys were not happy, Eric, none of us. and we waste a lot of time and money, and it is what it is. But they have issues, and we had no control over that. So now we go to another company, and I was on that Zoom call with you all, and I heard you, and I heard them, and I understood it all. But something kept gnawing at me to go back and continue to research this and look at this and look at this. I spent hours. I talked to firms, 3 different firms in the United States, throughout the United States that do these things. I called Mayor Brannard from Carmel. He called me back while he's on a train in Germany even. I said, hey, thanks for calling me back. You need to do it while you're on vacation. He's actually over there lecturing on roundabouts and city planning and design. He's going to Dubai in a couple weeks to do the same thing. This guy's an expert, had 150 roundabouts. He instituted those roundabouts. And as I talked to him, he said, yeah, we had to retrofit these things into a lot of different small places as well. So we've been working towards this thing for years, and tonight's recommendation it's a major design reversal, of course, but before we make that shift, I believe we owe it to the public, we owe it to our long-term interest as a city, make sure we fully exhaust all options. And I think at that meeting we felt like we had. And there's just something that keeps gnawing at me. And the city has invested years, we've invested funds. The new study contradicts earlier conclusions based on model projections, not empirical performance, of course. I get that. There are pure cities with populations and traffic volumes that have got proven engineering of multiple lane roundabouts, or they can handle the high traffic volumes efficiently and sometimes not require additional land where these things were retrofitted. Lincoln, Nebraska is one of them. They've got a couple roundabouts there. They had a retrofit into a very tight space. They did a peanut-shaped one. And then they talked about volume and safety and efficiency, of course. The more I looked at this, saying a roundabout's going to fail in 8 to 10 years doesn't tell the whole story, as I thought about it, because it assumes one geometric configuration that we've got, but we haven't tested out if there are innovative designs. And I think you might argue with me on that, but there are the peanut-shaped designs. I don't think the separated grade design is going to work because you have to elevate that. But they accommodate a higher flow, maybe without additional right-of-way. I'm not totally convinced that we can't do that without without doing the right-of-way. So I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, what are the major points? Well, failure in traffic engineering teams, we're talking about E and an F. We talked about Korean Veterans Boulevard. The Liberty and Mallory model is constrained because it's designed at 160, wasn't that right? 160?
Correct.
Feet inscribed diameter, yeah. But before defaulting to signals, which if a roundabout's going to fail, the signal's going to fail. I mean, we're going to have pileup, we're going to have gridlock. You cannot get away from that. So I don't know if the peanut shape would work. Alternative entry deflection, geometry and signal approaches, sometimes to balance the flow. That's what I've been learning about, how in Nebraska and Arizona, how they do that when they have high volume traffic. And the other thing is, they have some of them in Nebraska, especially. The gentleman was telling me, he said, we had high volume, not any more land to expand it. So we've gone to a 2-leg meter, not 4 legs, 2 legs. So if you've got that roundabout and you're coming in on Liberty Pike and you've got Mallory, you might meter the Liberty Pike and not the Mallory. So that when Mallory picks up, those are metered, they stop, people go. And then it goes again. So I've talked to them about how that is implemented and there are some other ways to get natural gaps. we've changed consultants once, we've given scale of this project and the long-term traffic implications. I think it's prudent. I'm not asking that we go out and hire another consultant. I really don't think we need to do that. So after talking to Mayor Brainerd and talking to a couple of the engineers around town, around the country, I look at this and say, does the signalized intersection, it's not going to move more traffic. If it queues traffic instead of circulating it, because it's going to queue it, it's not going to circulate it. If a roundabout fails in 10 years, a signal is going to fail with the ADT projections. We're going to have that problem. And so then you also look at the long-term costs, every additional signal adds maintenance, electrical costs, delays, emissions, crash problems, crash exposure. So after I looked at all this, I said, what do I want to do with all this? Because I heard you loud and clear, Eric, and I heard you guys. So I'm not asking that we put it off. I just want to come in the next week, and I want to have a Zoom call with these gentlemen so that I can feel and know that I'm okay with this and that the board should be okay with it too. Because I think we have one shot to get this right for the next 40, 50, 60 years. Once that's in, it's in. A roundabout aligns with our city vision of what we want to do, trying to move traffic efficiently, design excellence. We want a good design. So I don't want to totally abandon it yet. If there's proven alternative, if design alternatives exist, especially if we can do something to help the gap, to get the gaps in there. So I'm not asking for the third-party engineering thing. I just would like to make sure between now and when we come back to the next meeting that we have that Zoom call and that our team is in that room and then we have some of these gentlemen and we can have the conversation. So I need the conversation so that when we come back to the board that we can share that with them and we know for sure that we're heading in the right direction. And I know this has been very tedious for you. I thank you for all the work you've done on it. But I'm still not there yet.
Yeah, we have
Alderman
a
Brown.
30-page report, which I'd be happy to share with you to pass on to whoever you'd like.
And we can facilitate a conversation. I will say, though, this consulting group, this engineering group, is very pro roundabout.
Yeah.
I mean, they told us they did something like 700 roundabouts. So they are not opposing it. They're just looking at the practicality of this specific location and what we're working with in the comparative that you see up on the screen. So, we're glad to have other people give us feedback, but I think it's been pretty thoroughly reviewed, but we're glad to have another conversation.
This is a big, big decision, and I don't know if anybody else in the board, I need this.
Alderman Brown, you're recognized. I've got Alderman Brown.
I'm not going to argue the failure of the roundabout, but I may be alone in this, but I'm never going to be okay with getting rid of the roundabout, and I'll tell you why. I think we have a responsibility to move traffic, but I also think we have a responsibility to pedestrians and to our community character. And at some point, you run out of right-of-way. At some point, you run out of the ability to widen your way out of congestion. At some point, signals will fail too. You know, we're going to widen Mac Hatcher. We're going to do work on Carruthers. We're going to do work at Cool Springs and 65. We're going to do local road work. There's always going to be different changes. And at some point, we're going to look back and we're going to look at the character of this area with the schools and neighborhoods, and we're going to look at what we could have done to traffic flow and to the character of this area and to the safety and to the calm intersection that we could have created. And I think we're going to look back and wish we didn't put 7 lanes of traffic right here and stacked up traffic that doesn't solve a problem for CBS. It doesn't solve a problem for Stanwyck. It just stacks up a parking lot full of pavement. And it does. It prioritizes pavement over people. And again, I may be alone in that, but to me, we just keep adding lanes. I said the same thing when we were talking about the Galleria. I think we just really are missing opportunities to try to, every time we stop traffic, we create congestion instead of moving traffic. And I think we also just miss the opportunity to create more character. When we add lanes, we miss streetscape opportunities. We miss opportunity to create a better city and a more beautiful city. This is an opportunity to create character in our community and not just throw down more pavement. And I think over time, we're going to make other adjustments. And I think we're going to look back 10 years from now and we're going to say, man, too bad we got 7 lanes of traffic going through here. We could have really done something really cool in this area that had some character and moved traffic at the same time, and maybe didn't have pedestrians scared for their life running across 7 lanes of traffic to and from school. So I'll take the one vote, but I'm not going to argue what it is showing. Eventually that's going to fail too, but I'm just never going to be okay with doing it. I think we were finally there, and I think in the long run it would have been a better solution, and it's okay.
One thing to consider too is with a roundabout, we don't have a signal to control and give more time to certain legs. With a traffic signal, you had that ability to try to flex that and substantially improve that flow. When a roundabout fails, it fails exponentially.
I understand.
And you're seeing that out there in McKay's Mill right now where it's unbalanced. And those queues are just backing up, and there's not much that can be done at that point.
Unless we meter them.
Unless we meter.
And we can meter two legs.
Alderman Bryant.
Yep.
I'm going to choose my words because I have a lot of respect for all of you all. But I've been the dissenting vote on this. It's kind of become the joke, Brady and the roundabouts, I know. Jonathan, I can't see your whole face because I really need to gloat a little bit. I've been uncomfortable with this since 2016. This is literally my front door. I live in Andover. I've had 5 children go to Centennial. I know, and you're a little bit further up the street, Bev, the other direction, but there were too many, for me, negatives, retrofitting a roundabout, not only at the base of the Royal Oaks Hill that backs up. It's 1,800 kids, some of which are learning to drive. It is learning new traffic patterns when you don't even know how to operate a vehicle. There were so many things. You want to talk about gnawing, it's been gnawing at me since then. And it was one of those votes that, obviously my dissenting vote never moved the needle. But when you talk about design and all that, Matt, I know what you're saying, but to me, safety is what's paramount here. Yeah. And that was my fear. We're going to disagree. I didn't interrupt you, Bev. Please don't. Please don't. It's not fair. I appreciate this. I appreciate the fact that we had somebody go back and look at it again. Because all the things that concerned me is what came out. Yes, aesthetically, it's not going to give you whatever streetscape you want. But I don't think it has it right now. And I don't know that a roundabout brings you this aesthetic. I'm not going to sit here and have a pissing contest. And I'm not going to gloat. But I, for one, am glad that we were able to get to where we are for a myriad of reasons.
Alderman Peterson.
Just to say, along with all of that, this looks like it doesn't make as many problems for some of the buildings that are already out there. And that the roundabout was going to have a problem with that. And as I say, I definitely think that the new design is much, much safer in the long run.
So the original concept that was presented was our city standard, and that was where we had the multi-use trail on one side of the street, and we had a sidewalk on the other side of the street, and a 6-foot grass strip. We always start with that standard. So the original signalized intersection had that as a standard. That was showing the really wide corridor impacts to all the businesses, and that's kind of where we started back many, many years ago. And then, of course, the roundabout corridor reduced that, and we further refined what the sidewalks and what the grass strips would be and narrowed those down so those would still flow into either design. either way. So that would still reduce those corridors, at least the legs coming into either intersection. So that's part of where that reduction comes from and why it was so different from the original intersection.
I've got Alderman Baggett, then I'll get Alderman Caesar.
Make sure I'm reading this right. We've got 2,000 cars coming through here in the AM, 3,700 in the PM. Does that sound right? I mean, I'm reading those little small. The bottom totals at the bottom of the left, is that like a total count? I know it's kind of small and blurry.
Yeah, sorry.
But would that be the total count?
Say it one more again.
It's like 2,400 in the.
Yes, that's the queue length.
How many total cars are going through these? I mean, just what is the count?
Why don't you go back?
I think this kind of goes back to this is not a micro project at $22 million, but it is, ties back to kind of on the scale of heartburn for city traffic. We paid $28 million for a bridge that 6,000 folks are going to drive through and by 2040. But how many people are driving through this that we're going to pay?
But it's the peak hour. We don't have the total numbers in front of us, the 24-hour values, but we have the peak hour values in front of us. So,
what are the peak? What is the peak?
So it's not laid out for the whole intersection. It's laid out per leg. So it's the way we've got the data in front of us. I really can't answer that question right now.
And I apologize, but I think that the
Annual average daily, I mean, this is gonna be
average
25,000
people per day.
per day.
It's big.
Yeah.
That's bigger than some stretches of Mac Hatcher.
It's equivalent.
Equivalent.
It's very equivalent. Yeah, I think one of the
All
team
right,
count
that's what I was
stations
trying to
on
get at.
Liberty Pike, and think
I was
about
trying to get a
15,000
frame of
cars.
reference for like how much is flowing through there. That's what I was looking for. I like roundabouts. I think they work. By the way, for everyone who thinks that roundabouts aren't safe, you drive through one when you go through the center of our town in the square every day. If you go through there every day, people figure it out. It works. We move a tremendous amount of cars that go through the middle of Franklin. Now, who would ever dream of signalizing Main Street and 3rd Avenue? No, you wouldn't, because that just kind of seems ridiculous now. I mean, it just kind of seems like why would you want to signalize this? But so that's my general statement on roundabouts. Now on this particular section, I don't know what the right decision. I don't know what it sounds like the decision is. We're going signalized. So I mean that's kind of where I'm leaning. I agree with Matt. I agree with him on the. I don't like it. I don't think that's kind of makes this not feel as residential and like that kind of like transitional area of residential to commercial. It kind of brings in that Cool Springs kind of wideness kind of into this kind of transitional area, and that does kind of feel. But maybe we can deal with some of that in design, and maybe there are some capabilities for us to make some different kind of improvements during the design phase. But I don't want this to be an anti-roundabout kind of decision. Clearly this needs to be bigger, but they work. And that's why you don't want to put a street light on Main Street and 3rd Avenue, because it works. It moves a ton of cars. Anyway, that's all I have, Mayor.
Alderman Caesar.
So I suppose it's good that we didn't start construction in 2021 on this. And
Yes.
I also wasn't a part of some of those initial conversations around this, and sometimes this may be why government moves slowly so that we can collect additional information. And the community has changed. There's perhaps more people heading east in the morning than were on some of the original projections.
And you mentioned something there is that we have more information now. We did the Cool Spring Transportation Study, and we look at a larger region versus relying on just small piecemeal traffic impact studies to provide that data to us. That's the biggest change in what the data shows us now.
And it's interesting that you bring up that piece, because just last week I was speaking with a constituent who reminded us of the challenges at intersections that seem to come up after we do a traffic impact study. And we're somewhat surprised at this intersection that maybe is 3/4 of a mile or 500 yards that fails 4 years after full development build out. And perhaps in the past, we've looked at traffic analysis impact studies in more of a box rather than in more of a globe.
That's correct.
And perhaps that's what this tells us. Maybe I stand alone here, and having driven on thousands of roundabouts, I was in Indiana just yesterday, and very, very close to many of the 170 roundabouts that were in Carmel. And I've got a 15-year-old that's learning to drive right now. He's learned how to merge. He's learned how to accelerate on the interstate once. He's probably been in the most near-miss situations at signalized intersections, if I'm honest. Whether he has a protected left-hand turn or not is a confusing concept for this 15-year-old to come up with. And I have all the respect in the world for the woman who sits to my left, but I think our kids will learn to survive through these roundabouts. And if they have accidents, it's less likely that they'll be in catastrophic accidents.
And the data does show that. It's just this particular area, it was about fitting the right size infrastructure in the area.
And Jonathan, I think the biggest concern I have is 2 weeks ago at church, a woman that usually smiles and waves at me stopped me as I was walking into Mass to say, roundabouts don't work. I'll tell you why. And as the priest was beginning to walk down the aisle to begin Mass, she continued to share that she lives near UBEV, and the concern, you know her, and you've spoken with her son, she told me this. The concern about that was not that roundabouts don't work, and so maybe her intent was right, but the statement she made was incorrect. Roundabouts can work if they're designed well. And as I looked at the Chopstick intersection that we have in downtown Nashville, that I think that was the picture. That's probably not the correct name, but it's what I call it because it looks like someone threw chopsticks in the ground.
The pixie sticks, but you're close enough.
I wonder, is there a way to get a roundabout that is properly sized, that could fit in that area, that could keep children from T-boning each other and maybe having to learn a new skill? There looks like there's some area on the Williamson County property. I'm certain that our staff, and I would just ask this question because I wasn't involved in the earlier discussions. I'm certain that to the naked eye looking down there, that if you moved that perhaps a little bit to the north and to the east, you capture a little bit more free land. But maybe you've looked at that.
So that's really the only quadrant you have to really work with is essentially that northeast quadrant that's on the school, but the unused school property essentially. And there's I think they use part of that for some sort of detention. I'm not sure how effective that detention is. It's more just a big kind of depression. With
It looks like a swale, right?
Essentially, and it's a big dip and with a drain in it. The issue really we've run into there is with the roundabout, to get it to function properly, you've got to be able to do a deflection angle into the roundabout to slow traffic down into the roundabout. And we're so confined on the corridors that lead into it with the buildings on every side, except the one side, the one corner, is that moving the roundabout, which is an option in a lot of cases, I can't really move it to a different quadrant because I have to be able to adjust the legs to move and geometrically line those legs up and still put the proper entry angles and exit angles into it. So I can't really adjust the legs. So the legs coming in from three sides still have to generally stay in the same place. And the one leg I can move, but that really doesn't help me fit the roundabout in there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And then the final piece, maybe, and this is an emotional topic because it matters, which is great. It shows that the citizens who, it sounds like based on this analysis, the citizens supported the roundabout a few years ago.
Some of them did, some of them didn't.
Yeah. I'm just going based on the document that was presented tonight. I want to make sure that they're heard, that they want this roundabout, but I would assume that those same citizens that said they wanted it would come back with pitchforks if we built the McKay's Mill roundabout here, and it resulted in the same types of queuing that we're seeing at that area right now. So it's important that we get it right. And I don't mean to call it the McKay's Mill. I don't know what to call it. The McEwen roundabout. Yes, that's the one I'm talking of. And then the final piece I would say is, Eric, you made this comment that roundabouts can fail because of size, but they are dependent to and often fail due to the absence of a natural gap in traffic.
The traffic
And
flow,
after I
yes.
spoke with that constituent and then went to confession, I thought about the leg of Royal Oaks. I think is still the name of the street as it comes down the hill and
It
kind
is
of
North Royal
meanders.
Oaks.
I said, well, it will continue to work because there's a traffic light at 96, but the traffic light at 96 will have a turn. And then it will continue to work because there's that traffic light where you go into the gun shop and the bowling alley. But
Lakeview?
Yes, Lakeview Drive. And then, but there will probably be the absence of that natural gap at this area, and that's what causes me some concern. So while I agree with some of the comments of my colleagues, I also would just finish, if we went to another engineering firm, would they come back with yet a third analysis? Or do we feel that what we have before us is the closest to the truth that we can get?
We're more comfortable with this analysis, and I'll give you part of the reason with that is, without going too in-depth with it, is from the analysis that was done regionally, not getting it too into the weeds with the Cool Spring Transportation Study. They're one of the first ones that identified and said, hey, you might want to take another look at this roundabout because we're seeing something different than what you're showing. So we looked at it from that point of view with this new consultant. So that's actually two consultants kind of saying that our traffic data based on the Cool Springs Transportation Study, more regional look, is showing there to be an issue here traffic-wise. So we've already kind of had three look at it in essence, two in detail, one more regionally.
And Alderman Berger's requested some additional dialogue with these folks. We're glad to do that. We can make that happen. I will just stress, we did not do this lightly. We've dug in on this. We've asked all the same questions you've asked, quite frankly. So it is not an anti-roundabout statement that we are making.
No.
It is at this location, given its limitations, given the how it would have to lay out and the size that's required for the volume coming through, it just does not seem practical here. And the last thing we want to do, whether it's an intersection, a traditional intersection, or a roundabout, is do something that we can project out failing in the 10-year window. That would be absolutely ridiculous. We don't want to do that. I think we all agree on that. But we'll continue to look at what is the best solution to improve this intersection, and have additional conversations, hear from folks. But after a lot of thought and a lot of work on this, multiple other folks weighing in, this is where we are. And those charts, I think, tell you why we're headed, recommending we head in that direction at this specific location. But we continue to be open to look at those opportunities because we know it can really, really function well in the right situation where we can do it right.
You got 30 seconds, Alderman Berger, then I'm going to take the gavel and hammer you down.
I agree with you. Number one is safety, safety, safety. That's why roundabouts are better than signalized. Moving traffic is second. Young versus seniors. Young people drive them a lot better than the elderly seniors. As Matt said, there's going to be off-site improvements and mitigation of traffic off-site. So you've got Mallory at McEwen, it's going to be improved eventually. You're going to have Royal Oaks at 96 that is eventually down the road is going to get improved. You're going to have dedicated right-hand turn lanes if we do this right. Dedicated right-hand turn lanes on Royal Oaks to Liberty, Liberty to Mallory, from Mallory off to west on Liberty. So there's a lot of other things playing in on that.
We're adjourned.
Well, back.